In the late 15th century, the global economy didn't revolve around Europe. The real wealth was concentrated across the Indian Ocean, where Arab, Indian, and Chinese merchants traded in a massive, interconnected network. Europe was sitting on the outer edge, acting as a consumer of goods it couldn't produce itself. Commodities like black pepper, cinnamon, and cloves were essential for preserving food and manufacturing medicines. Because of the vast chain of middlemen required to get these goods to Western markets, these spices were weighed and traded like gold. But this supply chain was severed in 1453. The Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople, seizing the vital bridge linking European buyers to Asian markets. The Ottomans established heavy taxes and blockades across the traditional land routes. Almost overnight, Eastern goods became prohibitively expensive and nearly impossible for European nations to acquire through their traditional partners. Finding a direct sea route was now an urgent fiscal priority. Without a way to bypass the Ottomans, the gold and silver of European kingdoms continued to drain into foreign coffers, leaving the continent's economies at a severe disadvantage. Portugal decided to solve this by sailing completely around the African continent. This was a direct attempt to bypass the blockade and reclaim control over their own trade. This is a model of a Portuguese caravel. Surviving the deep ocean required a move away from traditional coastal ships in favor of these vessels, which featured specialized sail structures and hulls built for open sea currents. To navigate without land in sight, sailors used instruments like the brass astrolabe. These allowed navigators to calculate their latitude by measuring the stars, bringing mathematical precision to the search for a route east. In July 1497, a fleet of 4 ships and roughly 170 men left Lisbon.
Led by Vasco da Gama, this crew carried the ectogamic ambitions of the Portuguese crown. Success meant breaking the Ottoman monopoly and redirecting the flow of global wealth. Failure meant the loss of a significant portion of the nation's naval investment to the Atlantic. The journey down the African coast was grueling. The ships were battered by storms, and the crew suffered from scurvy, a disease caused by the lack of fresh food that slowly incapacitated the sailors during their months at sea. By November, they reached the Cape of Good Hope. This jagged coastline was known for its towering waves and unpredictable winds, serving as the physical point where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans violently collide. Crossing the Indian Ocean required more than European technology. In the port of Malindi, da Gama had to hire a local pilot with the experience needed to catch the seasonal monsoon winds. This engraving shows Calicut, where the Portuguese landed in 1498. Instead of a primitive outpost, da Gama entered a cosmopolitan trading metropolis. The local ruler was unimpressed. The Portuguese arrived with basic items like coarse cloth, which the local court mocked for their low quality. The Portuguese realized that in an open, competitive market, Europe had nothing of value to offer the East. Their goods simply could not compete with the luxury items flowing through Asian ports. Da Gama returned to Portugal with a fraction of his original crew. His reports confirmed a route existed, but they also suggested that to dominate this trade, Portugal would have to rely on its military advantages rather than commercial ones. In 1502, da Gama returned to India with a fleet of 20 warships. This second expedition was a clear demonstration of military power, designed to secure a foothold in the Indian Ocean. Da Gama used terror to intimidate his competitors. His fleet intercepted a ship carrying hundreds of pilgrims, including women and children. After looting the vessel, the Portuguese locked the passengers in the hold and burned the ship, before turning their cannons on the port of Calicut itself. They then introduced the Cartaz system. This was a mandatory naval permit that transitioned the Indian Ocean from a free trade zone into a taxed, militarized space where any ship without Portuguese clearance was seized or destroyed. The Portuguese used heavy artillery to replace the existing merchant networks with a militarized monopoly. They seized control of the sea lanes and demanded a cut of every cargo that passed through them. To maintain this control, Portugal built permanent military forts at strategic oceanic choke points. By seizing hubs like Goa and Malacca, they could monitor and tax the most important trade routes in the region. This new infrastructure allowed them to bypass the Middle East entirely. The wealth that once moved through Arab and Ottoman lands began hugging the African coast,
flooding directly into the ports of Western Europe. This shift sparked a massive arms race as other European powers noticed the profits. By the 1600s, the Dutch, French, and British had launched their own heavily armed trading companies to challenge the Portuguese. These companies soon moved beyond commerce. They began interfering in local politics and utilizing rivalries between Indian states to secure territory, transforming their trading posts into colonial outposts. By the 18th century, these events had consolidated global economic and military power in Western Europe. The system established in 1498 became the foundation for centuries of colonial dominance. The phrase, "the discovery of India," ignores a vital reality. India was already the connected heart of the global economy. For the merchants of the East and Africa, it had been a central, mapped destination for centuries. Western history frames Da Gama as a hero. Asia remembers a vanguard of violence. His voyage established the naval dominance sustaining European empires for centuries. We want to know your verdict. Considering the history we've covered, should Vasco da Gama be remembered as a great maritime explorer or as the architect of the modern world's greatest exploitation? Share your thoughts in the comments. A few ships stationed at the right geographic choke points can dictate the flow of global wealth for generations. The legacy of 1498 shows that history is built on these types of strategic, often brutal choices.